ෆන් එක next level කරන dialogue fan blaster.
Tonight, on First at 9 this Tuesday, the 7th of January 2025. Chinese relations. President to visit China from the 14th to the 17th of January. Sri Lanka will continue to adhere to One China principle, assures the cabinet spokesman. Airfare relief. Sri Lanka extends relief from deviation tax provided at 3 airports. The tax question. Opposition questions government's decision to increase income tax threshold and withholding tax. Satellite broadband. PRCSL approves Starlink's tariff plans for satellite broadband services. Packages range from 9,200 to 1.8 million rupees per month.
Chino Dairy, Sri Lanka Kiren Perata. ඔබේ විශ්වාසය දෙනු සෙන්සුරයින් දැන් ළඟමැති ෆාමසියෙන් ලබාගත හැක.
කට්ට පරිස්සම් කරගත්තොත් අපි පරිස්සම්.
Asian Paints Causeway Aquasafe වැස්සත් මට්ටුයි ගෙදරත් තිස්නේ.
From Derana, this is Derana First at 9. Live from Studio 24 in Colombo.
Good evening and welcome to First at 9 on Sri Lanka's premium news provider, Derana 24. I'm Tarindu Mahendra, joining you live with the latest developments of the day. In your top story tonight, President Anura Dissanayake will embark on an official visit to China from the 14th to the 17th of this month. This was revealed by Cabinet spokesman Minister Dr. Nalinda Jayatissa during the Cabinet briefing today. Speaking further, the Cabinet spokesman, who highlighted that Sri Lanka has continuously adhered to the One China principle, assured that the incumbent government will continue to follow the policy.
මේ ජනාධිපතිතුමාගේ චීන සංචාරයේ කවදද ඇත්තටම නිල වශයෙන් පටන් ගන්නෙ කැබිනට් මණ්ඩලය මේ එක්ෂීණයක් කියන ප්‍රතිපත්තිය පිළිබඳ දීර්ඝ සාකච්ඡාවක් පැවැත්වුණා කියලා. මේක නැවත අවධාරණය කරන්න අවශ්‍ය වුණේ කුමන හේතුවක් නිසාද කියන එකත් පුළුවන් නම් පැහැදිලි කරන්න.
චීන සංචාරය 14 වෙනිදා ආරම්භ වෙනවා.
The President's tour of China will take place from the 14th to the 17th of January. The Minister of Foreign Affairs Vijitha Herath and the Minister of Transport, Highways, Ports and Civil Aviation Bimal Ratnayake will join the tour. As a country, we have consistently adhered to the One China principle. When a new government is established, the Cabinet of Ministers must reaffirm these agreed upon policies. This is not solely related to the tour. Even if the tour did not occur, we would continue to follow it.
නුවරඑළිය දිස්ත්‍රික් මහරෝහලේ අක්ෂි ශල්‍ය කර්ම වලට භාජනය වූ රෝගීන් කිහිප දෙනෙකුගේ දෘෂ්ටි අහිමිවට අදාළ වන්දි ගෙවීම.
Regarding the compensation for several patients who lost sight after receiving treatment at the District General Hospital in Nuwara to determine the compensation, a 7-member committee chaired by an additional secretary was appointed, which has recommended compensating 17 patients. The main issue was the lack of mechanisms to pay compensation in such events. After reviewing private and state compensation methods, it was decided to pay a standard compensation starting from 250,000 rupees with legal blindness compensation of up to 1 million rupees for the 17 patients. Additionally, the Cabinet ordered the Health Ministry to take legal action against the companies that imported these substandard medicines.
සැපයුම් කර එරෙහිව නීතිමය ක්‍රියාමාර්ග ගන්නත් කැබිනට් මණ්ඩලය විසින් සෞඛ්‍ය හා ජනමාධ්‍ය අමාත්‍යාංශය වෙත උපදෙස් ලබා දුන්නා. මේ වන විට අස්සසුම ප්‍රතිලාභී පවුල්වල පාසල් දරුවන් සඳහා ලිපිද්‍රව්‍ය ලබා ගැනීමට
At present, an allowance of 6,000 rupees for school supplies is being distributed to over 800,000 children from Aswasuma beneficiary families. Furthermore, it has been decided to extend this allowance for children in schools with fewer than 300 students, children coming from child development centres and clergy students through vouchers.
එකතු කරලා තියෙනවා. එය voucher මගින් ලබා දෙනවා.
කර්ම දෙපාර්තමේන්තුවම ගිය අප්‍රේල් නිකුත් කරපු වාර්තාවක තියෙනවා මාස 14කට සෑහෙන සහල් තොග රට තුල තියෙනවා. එතකොට මේ තොග දෙවීමේ මෙහෙයුම් වල ප්‍රගතිය කොහොමද?
ඉතින් තියෙනවා නම් ආලිංගයක් ඇති වෙන හේතුවක් නැහැ.
If that is accurate, there shouldn't be a reason for the shortage. We acknowledge that there is an issue with the statistics in the country. The existing data is contradictory and inaccurate. As of yesterday, 106,000 metric tons of rice have been imported, with another 10,000 metric tons arriving today. By the third week of January, local rice will start to be available in the market. We expect to purchase between 250,000 and 400,000 metric tons and are currently facilitating this procurement.
මියන්මාර් සරණාගතයන් ඒ කියන්නේ රෝහිංග්‍යා සරණාගතයන් ඒගොල්ලෝ ඇත්තටම මියන්මාර් ඉඳලා මෙහෙට අවිලා තියෙන විශාල සංහාරයකට පලා යාමක් වශයෙන් අපිට දැනගන්න ලැබිලා තියෙනවා මේ අය නැවතත් අර මියන්මාර් සංහාරකයන්ට නැවත ලබා දෙන්න කියන්නේ ඒගොල්ලෝ පිටුහල් කරන්න යනවා කියන්නේ මේක ඇත්ත තත්ත්වය මොකක්ද
මෙම සංක්‍රමණිකයන් සම්බන්ධයෙන් ආරක්ෂා අමාත්‍යාංශයත් විදේශ අමාත්‍යාංශයත් එක්ව කටයුතු කරමින් ඉන්නේ.
The Defence Ministry and the Foreign Ministry are collaborating on this sensitive matter. We are involved to protect their human rights while ensuring the security of the region. Therefore, the Foreign Minister and the President as the Minister of Defence are actively working on issues concerning the refugees.
මේ ගැන අවධානය යොමු කරමින් කටයුතු කරමින් යනවා මේ සංක්‍රමණිකයන් සම්බන්ධයෙන්.
පිරිපුන් ජීවිතයකට ඔබ සමගින් පෙරට Union Assurance.
Welcome to Cinnamon Life, South Asia's biggest entertainment hub, where awe awaits.
චන්දුරුසුමේ කාගෙන් මන අපේ සිග TV සඳහා සුපිරි ඩීල්.
Sadaharita Plantations Limited, celebrating 22 years of your trust.
Crunchy goodness for hunger on the go.
Sri Lanka will extend the period in which relief is provided on deviation tax to airlines that operate fixed-time flights to the Palale, Ratmalana and Mattala international airports. Meanwhile, the draft amendments to the Code of Criminal Procedure Act No. 15 of 1979 are to be presented to Parliament for concurrence following clearance from the Attorney General. And with that, let's review these and other cabinet decisions made during the week.
The Cabinet of Ministers granted approval for the signing of a Memorandum of Understanding with Vietnam for cooperation on customs matters. The MOU is expected to reduce the cost of transactions between the two countries, aid in the calculation and collection of cross-border tariffs, prohibit the transfer of goods subject to limitations, and impose regulations related to the limitations. Meanwhile, Sri Lanka will extend the period in which relief is provided on deviation tax at 3 airports. Accordingly, the 50% free waiver from deviation tax provided to airlines that operate fixed-time flights to the Jaffna International Airport in Palali will be extended until the 30th of January 2026, while the same exemption provided at the Colombo International Airport in Ratmalana will be extended for a year from the 27th of March this year. Similarly, the complete exemption from deviation tax provided to airlines that operate fixed departure flights from the Mattala Rajapaksa International Airport will be extended for a year with effect from the 29th of December 2024. In the meantime, it has been decided to supply discarded paper from government institutions to the Walai Chennai paper mill. Accordingly, discarded paper from the government press, State Printing Corporation, Election Commission, all state universities and all ministries and departments are to be provided to the mill free of charge, while waste paper from other public corporations, boards, statutory boards and all other government associated institutions are to be sold to the mill at concessionary prices. Meanwhile, the procurement process to rent 2 80-ton bollard pull tug vessels for the port of Colombo will be terminated upon request from the Sri Lanka Ports Authority. Instead, a new procurement process will be initiated to rent 2 70-ton bollard pull twin azimuth stern drive harbour tug vessels for the new terminal operations that are slated to begin mid this year. In the meantime, the contract to construct the 220 kilowatt Anuradhapura New Harbour transmission line will be awarded to MS Silex Engineering Private Limited. Meanwhile, the draft amendments to the Code of Criminal Procedure Act No. 15 of 1979 are to be presented to Parliament for concurrence following clearance from the Attorney General. The amendments are expected to enable suspects or accused to be exempt from appearing before court in view of exceptional circumstances and include provisions for the remote recording of evidence and sending of summons to expert witnesses via email. In a separate decision, Cabinet has approved the signing of a Memorandum of Understanding between the Sri Lanka Tourism Promotion Bureau and China Media Group to utilise the group's technologies and expertise to position Sri Lanka as a leading destination for Chinese tourists. Similarly, approval was granted for the Ministry of Agriculture, Livestock, Lands and Irrigation to enter an agreement with China's General Administration of Customs regarding inspection, quarantine and health requirement protocols with relation to the export of chicken from Sri Lanka to China. In the meantime, approval was also granted to sign the certificate of delivery for the 35.7 million yuan worth of emergency aid provided by China to small-scale fishermen of the northern and eastern provinces. The aid includes 75,000 fishing nets, 500 prefabricated housing units and 1,630 tons of rice. Similarly, approval was also granted for the Ministry of Health and Mass Media to enter memoranda of understanding and cooperation agreements with the National Radio and Television Administration of China, the Xinhua News Agency and the China Media Group. In the meantime, Cabinet has approved several new appointments. Accordingly, Special Grade Officer of the Administrative Service WGM Hemanthakumara will be appointed as the District Secretary and Government Agent of Trincomalee, while Professor P.B. Turney Pradeep Kumara of the Department of Oceanography and Marine Geology of the University of Ruhuna is to be appointed as the Director General of the Department of Coast Conservation and Coastal Resource Management. Similarly, Professor Viranja Karunaratne will be appointed as the Commissioner of the Sri Lanka Inventors Commission, while Senior Professor R.M.G. Rajapaksa and Dr. N.R.S. Aryaratne are to be appointed as the Assistant Commissioners.
Parliament convened for its inaugural session of the New Year 2025 today. During the session, opposition leader Sajith Premadasa questioned the government's actions to continue with the agreement with the International Monetary Fund and queried whether the public mandate was to continue with the current agreement or to change it. Meanwhile, opposition legislator Dr. Harsha De Silva questioned the government's motive in submitting a proposal to continue the special commodity levy on essential food items. The opposition also highlighted the issue of Rohingya refugees currently sheltering in Sri Lanka. Economic growth has increased in 2024 compared to 2023. We have made progress in the statistics for 2024, but it is important to note that the people have paid a price for this growth. However, no politician has taken responsibility for this man-made crisis. Perhaps they have paid a small price for it. The government's plan must move forward with the 22 million people of this country. That is the plan of this administration.
I would like to ask everyone who speaks about the mandate, was the mandate to continue the current IMF agreement? The statement you made about changing IMF policies has now been completely disregarded.
If you refer to your manifesto, you stated that the income tax threshold would be increased from 1.2 million to 2.4 million rupees. Now you are saying it will only be raised to 150,000 rupees. Furthermore, you mentioned an increase in the withholding tax from 5% to 10%. None of this was outlined in the manifesto. Additionally, your manifesto stated that VAT on essential food items would be reduced to 0%. However, today the Prime Minister directed the special commodity levy proposal to the Committee on Public Finance, suggesting that import taxes on these essential items will remain unchanged. Yet, in your manifesto, you promised to remove such taxes.
Recently, a group of Rohingya refugees arrived in the country. We have heard that the government planned to deport them. I urge the government not to take such an action. Please adhere to the principle of non-refoulement. We cannot forcibly deport them.
Fast track your career from O-levels with eSoft.
Diabetol සීනි වලින් පරිස්සම් වන ඔබට අමතක නොවන පෝෂණය.
Prime Group ලංකාවේ ප්‍රථම වතාවට හඳුන්වා දෙන land leasing ලේසියෙන් මීටමක්.
Single 1111 up to 60% off from the 11th November to the 17th of November.
Kalani wire කිසි ගින්නක් නැහැ.
කිසි ගින්නක් නැහැ. Kalani Fire Shield Wire.
Apico Met Real Samay Sapata Nidian Apico Springs are 4 meters Madili Rasakin.
Crunchy goodness for hunger on the go.
The Telecommunications Regulatory Commission approved the tariff plan for Starlink satellite broadband services to be implemented in Sri Lanka through Starlink Lanka Private Limited. Accordingly, TRCSL granted approval for 5 Starlink packages ranging from 9,200 rupees to 1.8 million rupees per month. Additionally, customers commencing Starlink packages are permitted to cancel their service at any time with no early termination fee. Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi is scheduled to visit Sri Lanka in 2025, according to the Indian High Commission in Sri Lanka. The dates of Prime Minister Modi's visit are yet to be confirmed by the two nations. President Anura Dissanayake extended an invitation to Prime Minister Narendra Modi during his official visit to New Delhi in mid-December last year. Previously, Indian Prime Minister Modi visited Sri Lanka twice between 2015 and 2017. Senior Vice President of Japan International Cooperation Agency Hara Shohei affirmed JICA's willingness to provide financial and technical assistance to government's Clean Sri Lanka program. This was conveyed during a meeting with President Anura Dissanayake at the Presidential Secretariat today. During the meeting, attention was also drawn to the ongoing Japan-backed development project at the Bandaranaike International Airport. The President's office reported that all projects initiated under JICA support are to be expedited and efficiently completed. JICA also expressed interest in supporting Sri Lanka in reforming its transport system and enhancing urban cleanliness through financial and logistical aid. Inspection of vehicles for illegal modifications and traffic violations continued across the island in line with the Clean Sri Lanka National Programme. Against this backdrop, Chief Forensic Pathologist at the Karapitiya Teaching Hospital, Dr. Rohan Ruwanpura noted that modifications on buses increase the probability of injuries to passengers during accidents. Meanwhile, clean-up campaigns were also organised around Sri Lanka in line with the Clean Sri Lanka initiative.
Sri Lanka police continue to inspect motor vehicles across all police divisions today in line with the Clean Sri Lanka National Initiative. Accordingly, police personnel deployed in Colombo and other areas advised motorists to remove illegal modifications from vehicles. Meanwhile, action was taken against a bus driver and a conductor operating a bus on bus route 100 between Panudura and Petta over 3 traffic violations as reported by an undercover police officer, and for instructing passengers to disembark from the bus, claiming that action taken against them was unjust. In the meantime, videos of illegal modifications being removed from buses are circulating on social media. However, certain parties expressed their objection against proceedings under the Clean Sri Lanka project.
Clean Sri Lanka
Clean Sri Lanka started from a wrong point. A significant number of votes for the NPP came from three-wheeler and bus operators, but now they are abandoning them. There are other areas that they can focus on. We will make a decision on this. We will initiate an island-wide strike by Wednesday.
Meanwhile, the chief forensic pathologist at the teaching hospital Karapitiya, Dr. Rohan Ruwanpura, noted that vehicle modifications increase the probability of injuries during accidents.
Some drivers claim they struggle to stay awake at night without using cannabis. Seats are placed with no leg room. Damages to knees is no light matter. It costs around 1 million rupees to replace a knee with surgery. The knees of a person who underwent a knee transplant will never function the same way again.
In the meantime, cleaning campaigns were organised across government institutes and public spaces in line with the Clean Sri Lanka project. Accordingly, a clean-up was organised at the Colombo Fort railway station with the participation of railway officials.
President Anura Dissanayake today appointed a new High Commissioner and 4 ambassadors. Addressing the newly designated representatives, the President called on them to strengthen bilateral ties with the nations to which they have been assigned and enhance the welfare of Sri Lankan migrant workers in those countries. The President also urged the diplomats to work towards increasing foreign direct investments in Sri Lanka and expanding international market opportunities for local entrepreneurs. A new High Commissioner and 4 ambassadors were appointed today by President Anura Dissanayake during a formal ceremony at the Presidential Secretariat. Accordingly, WGS Prasanna was appointed as the High Commissioner designate to New Zealand. Meanwhile, RS Khan Azad was designated as the Sri Lankan ambassador to Qatar. SK Gunasekara received appointment as the Sri Lankan ambassador designate to Russia, while LP Ratnayaka was appointed as the ambassador designate to Kuwait. Meanwhile, ASK Senaviratna was appointed as the ambassador designate to Egypt. The newly designated diplomats engaged in a brief discussion with the President following the appointments. During the discussion, the President emphasized the importance of their roles in strengthening bilateral ties and fostering mutual cooperation with the respective nations. He also called on the newly appointed diplomats to prioritize improving Sri Lanka's international image and promoting its interests globally. The President's office stated that President Dissanayake stressed the need to provide equitable welfare services for Sri Lankans working abroad, ensuring that they receive support without any discrimination. Underscoring Sri Lanka's aspirations for economic growth, the President urged the diplomats to work towards increasing foreign direct investments and expanding international market opportunities for local entrepreneurs. Minister of Health and Mass Media Dr. Nalinda Jayatissa assures government will not work on behalf of private medicine companies' interests. Speaking during a tour of inspection at the National Medicines Regulatory Authority, the minister went on to say that government is committed to ensuring a continuous supply of quality medicines at regulated prices.
Minister of Health and Mass Media Dr. Nalinda Jayatissa recently engaged in a tour of inspection at the National Medicines Regulatory Authority in Colombo.
Our intent is to formalize health services. This process might not entail spectacles or media events, but we will devote our complete attention to laying this foundation. If not, we might see out the 5-year term granted to us through your mandate without accomplishing anything constructive, and so will the next administration. However, that should not be the case. It is imperative that both the state and private sectors provide a continuous supply of quality medicines at regulated prices. You work with the medicine industry, which has sometimes been called a racket focused solely on profits. I assure you that the political authority will only encourage and protect you and will never act on behalf of the aspirations of any private company or any other group. The biggest honour we can give Professor Senaka Bibile is to realise his vision in a manner that cannot be interfered with by any party. The Election Commission is set to initiate legal proceedings next week against 5 presidential candidates who failed to submit income and expenditure reports for the 2024 presidential election. Of the 12 presidential candidates who failed to submit the required reports, the election regulatory body has already initiated legal action against 7. Meanwhile, the Election Commission has directed district election officers to finalize the files of candidates who failed to submit their income and expenditure reports for the 2024 general election and promptly forward them to the police for legal action. The deadline for submitting the relevant reports expired on the 6th of December last year, but over 1,200 candidates failed to submit them before the deadline. Welcome back. Central Bank Governor Dr. Nandalal Veerasinghe says Sri Lanka aims to achieve a foreign reserve target of $7 billion in 2025 under the International Monetary Fund program. Joining the Derana 360 program, Governor Veerasinghe, while expressing confidence in the current economic growth, noted that the country is on track to meet this target. He further emphasized that even if vehicle imports are allowed, Sri Lanka will still be able to achieve the $7 billion target.
කොහොමද සංචිත සම්බන්ධයෙන් තියෙන ඉලක්ක අපිට 2025 අගවෙද්දි කොපමණ ඩොලර් සංචිතයක් අපි තියාගන්න උත්සාහ කරනවා.
මේ වසරේ අවසානයේ අත් වශයෙන්ම තිබුණේ ඒ ඉලක්කය අනුව බිලියන 5.6ක් වගේ ගණන් තමයි ඉලක්කය දුන්නේ. අපි බිලියන 6.5 වැඩි කළා. දැන් අර ණය ඔක්කොම අර පරණ ණය ගෙවලා ඉවරනාට පස්සේ බිලියන මේ වර්ෂය අවසාන වෙනකොට 6.1ක් තියෙනවා. මේ අවුරුද්ද අවසාන වෙනකොට තියෙන්නේ බිලියන 7 දක්වා වැඩි කර ගැනීම. මම හිතන්නේ ඒක අපහසු කාර්යයක් නෙවෙයි. වාහන ওই ආකාරයට විවෘත කරත් බිලියන 7ක් ගන්න.
4 international flights scheduled to land at the Bandaranaike International Airport in the early hours of today were diverted due to dense fog that significantly reduced visibility. The flights which were diverted included Sri Lankan Airlines flight UL226 from Dubai, UL881 from Guangzhou, China and UL174 from Bangalore, India, which were redirected to the Mattala Rajapaksa International Airport. Additionally, Turkish Airlines flight TK730 from Istanbul was diverted to Trivandrum Airport in India. The Sri Lankan Airlines flights refueled at Mattala but did not disembark passengers. The fog reportedly lifted by around 7 a.m., enabling subsequent flights to land at Katunayake Airport without incident. Accordingly, all diverted flights returned to Katunayake Airport by 9 a.m. The Colombo bourse closed on a negative note today as a result of price losses in counters such as Hatton National Bank, Central Finance Company and Hemas Holdings. The all-share price index closed 0.15% lower at 15,854.64 points, while the S&P SL20 fell by 0.33% to close at 4,786.98 points. Market turnover crossed 4.5 billion rupees. The banking sector was the top contributor to market turnover, followed by the diversified financial sector. Foreign participation in market activity remained at subdued levels, with foreigners closing as net sellers, offloading shares worth 156.5 million rupees. And with that, we wrap up tonight's edition of First at 9. Thank you for joining and have a good night.